Hey guys, welcome into another episode of Slightly Serious with Nick and Zane. Nick is here. He's remote, as you can see next to me in his pillow fort.
Hello.
We're in a different setup, a little remote recording session, but same guys, same content, same vibes. We're just a little different style today.
Absolutely, man.
But
Thanks for having me on the show. I'm a big
other
fan.
than where we are, nothing else is going to change. We're still going to be talking about our books, still going to just kind of bullshit as we do. He's just going to look a little more comfy. That's about it.
Yeah, I'm chilling.
But how you been? How you been, man?
I am well. I basically have been doing the same things that I have always done, with a different mindset. As you know, I've been getting quite into Buddhism.
Yeah, you've been reading a lot. You read the elements and the essence. Have you gotten into the fundamentals yet? Because you were talking about the
Yeah, I did
fundamentals.
read the elements of Buddhism, the essence of Buddhism. I just finished, and I have it here with me. It's the fundamentals of
Yeah, you mentioned it
Buddhism.
last week about the fundamental one. I just
I
didn't know
have
if you had
not
gotten into it
I
yet.
have not started it yet. I have not started it yet. I will say, I don't know if I mentioned this yet. I attended a Buddhist temple for the first time. Um,
No, you hadn't. I don't think you've mentioned it on here. We've talked about it, but you hadn't mentioned it on camera yet.
I did. I'll just say that I did attend a ceremony at a Buddhist temple, and prior to doing so, I through Zoom, actually, kind of what we're using now,
Literally.
did or participated in something else.
Hell yeah.
And then since attending the temple, which I have not yet gone back to, I have through Zoom attended 3 or 4 other practices as well. And
Isn't that crazy that what COVID really pushed is the remote ability of religion? Because I know a lot of churches that
I was
to
thinking
this
about that.
day still have like their Sunday service, and then they have like an afternoon Zoom service, or they just broadcast their Sunday service over Zoom, over Facebook Live, shit like that for people that can't get to church.
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about that when I was on there today. And even prior to that, I was like, man, this is really cool that, I mean, for one, Buddhism, I was thinking in that context, can reach such a wide audience now.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking for such a long time, especially due to like political aspects between China or wherever else, Tibet or anything, anywhere, any India, any place, any country that where it was, there was more than just an outside religious influence. There was also a political influence,
Mm-hmm.
and for it to travel and for Buddhism to even spread to begin with felt like a miracle.
Yeah.
And then for it to now have the ability to, like, I can be sent a link and attend a Buddhist ceremony or like Tibetan ritual. Like, this is Tibetan Buddhism. I've been reading a lot of the books that I've been reading are more Pure Land Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you the idea and the elements, and I mean, there's Buddhism in general is so vast, and it's like, and what it covers, but yet it covers so very little in words. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard to. I guess I can't really speak too much more on it, but I will say this: it has, for me, become something that is more than like just an interest. It has become something that is starting to shape the way I think about everything. It shapes the way I go to bed at night. It shapes the way I eat food. It shapes the way I throw things out. It shapes the way I like think about my conversations with people, my relationships
Mm-hmm.
with people. Like, I can't do. It's very difficult for me to do almost anything now because I feel like a seed has been planted in my brain, and I feel like it's just like slowly sprouting, and it'll eventually turn into something I can't even put into words. But a
Yeah.
seed has been planted, and for me, it has done. Like, I don't want to ever. All I want to do is just learn more about it. It's like it's it's such a driving force. Mind
Understandable.
blowing.
That's understandable for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been cool. So I feel great. And you know me, dude. How much do I always feel like I need to be around people, like all the time? Like I need to have somebody paying attention to me or be doing something.
Yeah, we've talked about this before on
Dude,
here.
would you say that I'm not someone who needs that, or that I am?
I mean, overall, I think for the majority of when we've talked and been friends, yeah, you definitely were someone like you would always trying to find someone to hang out with, something to go do. You're at the skate
Putting a
park as
thirst
much as you
trap
can.
out.
Yeah, your freaking thirst trap parade that you would put out. And like even like after a breakup, you're like, what am I supposed to do now? Like I don't have someone. I'm like, you don't really need someone all the time.
Even my kids, bro. I was always doing like it's not like I'm no longer doing everything for my kids. It's like of course like I put my kids before myself for everything, but it was like
you were doing nothing for you. You were just doing it
before I viewed my life as like my only purpose being to serve my children, like my kids. Like that was my only. Like, I wasn't doing anything for me. I was like, okay, now I have kids. I have a reason to live. I fucking hated myself before, dude. I fucking hated me. I couldn't live with me. I was fucking miserable, and I wanted everyone else to be miserable too, even if I didn't know it.
I think another thing that kind of exasperated that for you was your work situation currently. Since you've not been able to be at work with the medical stuff you've been going through, I think having more and more time to have to fill was probably something that really drove that into you more. It was like before, you had limited time, you had to get to work, then you had people at work you talked to, so like you had less time to think about it. But then now that when you're not able to go to work every day, and then you don't have your kids, you're sitting there like, what am I doing anything for? They're not here, so what am I supposed to be doing right now? And I think this whole like Buddhist thing and like you're even just the books you're reading and taking the time to dive more into that stuff, I think has definitely helped you. Like mentally, I've definitely seen a better change in you, just in your overall like mentality about shit.
I really appreciate that, dude. No, I do. I would not have been able to do this had I not gotten injured. So here's the thing, like those like there's always these parables and these stories, and whether it be the Bible or any sort of religion or any sort of philosophy, there's to associate an idea, we use a story because it's easy to tell a story and get the idea of something that we can relate to into our head, and that can help transfer information. So parables or stories have always been used, and there's always some, especially in like Christianity or Roman Catholicism, where they talk about this like always treat people with kindness and always I mean, I'm losing my train of thought here, man. There's so much that I want to say, but there's like so little I have the ability to. I guess what I'm trying to say is like I thought it was really bad when I got hurt. I thought it was terrible. Dude, my whole world was kind of like, well, now I can't skateboard. I love to skateboard. I mean, for one, I love playing with my kids. My kids are my whole world. Now I can't pick them up. I can't throw them the same way. I can't play with them the same way. I'm not a fun dad anymore. My kids are acknowledging the fact that I can't do this shit anymore. It made me want to fucking cry. I want to cry thinking about how I felt, dude. It drove me nuts. And then I couldn't go to work. And I couldn't provide. I had no money. Still got no money. And I was like, how am I supposed to be a dad now? What if I lose my place? What if I lose my car? And so I could supplement my income by driving. I could do like, not only like Uber or Lyft, but I could DoorDash or something, right? And so then I was like, well, now I am in danger of losing my ride and all these other things, but I'm in danger of because of my neurological stuff, crashing my car when I drive my kids. So now I'm homebound, and it was like I was stuck here.
Yeah.
And I was like, the one thing I'm always stuck with is myself. That's the one and only constant that I've ever seen is change. There's never been one thing that's ever been stable. So I could never find a beginning or an end to anything. and there was always change, and I always viewed it as chaos. And then I had all this time to sit down and think and discover other things. And through other avenues, somehow I was led to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have never been led to this had I not gotten hurt. So what seemed like a terrible thing at the time has for me turned into one of the best possible things that has ever occurred.
Yeah, and the thing about change and like, everyone's like innately we're like scared of it, like almost like to a natural level. Like things changing is a terrifying idea, but there's also the idea that consistency is almost even scarier, for the point of consistency creates complacency, and complacency creates you become unaware, you become detached, you stop paying attention to things, you stop working towards things, and it's almost unhealthier for something to be consistent in creating that complacency. Is how I kind of look at it. Where like if you don't have things that are changing, you don't have things that are forcing you to change how you react and work to be better. Like even like career wise, like I have a career now, but even like in the moment, like we've kind of talked about it, I'm at the point right now with my job where it's like I need a change. Things are happening. I'm not happy with it anymore, but like I'm still like hesitant on pulling that trigger for the change. And it comes to that point is like, am I happier being unhappy but in that stable spot, or will I be happier if I take the change, work towards a better potential better option? So it's like, am I letting the complacency of my job stop me from accepting change and, potentially having a better outcome? It could be a worse outcome, but there's no way to know. It's the idea of like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Like if you don't take a shot, then you can't hit it, but you also can't miss it.
Dude, we talked about that in previous relationships, you know? Like, not to even mention names, but both of us. I mean, we've talked about the fact that we are so comfortable in something and so afraid to leave because of that change that we were almost hindering our growth process.
Even though the thing we were in, part of us knew was not right. Part of us knew was not a healthy thing to be in for us or the person we were with. Like, because I know for a fact, like I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it, I will never claim to have been, or to be even to this day, a perfect person. I know for a fact that my last relationship said it was 7 years. I know for a fact in that 7 years I made countless mistakes. Like I'd be stupid and ignorant to think otherwise. But it's also like, it was one of those like both people are there just existing in what we know, the chaos that we're familiar with, instead of accepting in a potential better future because it seems scary. It's a world of unknown instead of it's a crappy but known path, or the world of an unknown path. Well, yeah, there's a potential it might be worse down this path, but it also might be way better. We don't know these things.
I feel like what we're talking about right now, Zane, is exactly what that rule in 21 Rules for Life, Jordan B. Peterson. It's kind of, he talks a lot about, we should maybe segue to that. Because I feel like what the topic that we're on could really help.
Yeah, so we'll switch to the book corner here, and we'll kind of just continue in through the rule. Yeah, and we'll go from there.
That sounds good. Let's do that.
All right, so 12 Rules of Life. We'll just jump right to that book, and then we'll kind of hop around about what we're reading.
Got it right here. Jordan B. Peterson.
The last rule we did was tell the truth or at least don't lie, I think was the last one we did.
Yeah, we can just go through them again. Rule 1 was stand up straight. We haven't touched this book in a moment. For those of you who are just joining us,
we did the truth one like a week or so ago. So that wasn't too long ago since we touched one of the rules, but we don't consistently do it. It's whenever we have a chance to fill it in. We've both been reading some pretty hefty amounts of other things. I've been doing the Stormlight Archive, big ass books. He's been going through his research phase of psilocybin and stuff, so he's kind of been sidetracked from the potential for getting into the rule. But we decided
and we
this week
joined
we'll
the
get back
world
into the
of
rule.
Harry Potter for a while too. We were in the magical world of Harry
Yep.
Potter. We just been back and forth, but we had a lot of new people join us, I guess, Zane. Whether you've realized it or not, I think that we have had some new viewers.
For sure. So it's definitely
and I appreciate everybody who's been viewing us. And before we even get into this, I just wanted to say really quickly, if I could, for all of you who have subscribed and who have left a comment or have liked our videos, thank you. That is what helps us. Because if you don't subscribe or you don't like the video or you don't leave a comment, it still counts as a view, and that's awesome for us. And we appreciate that as well. Thank you for even checking us out. If you can like, subscribe, or leave any sort of comment, that boosts us more than you know. And it's that type of boost that will really help us do even more and hopefully be able to do so much. We enjoy doing this so much, and to be able to do this all the time would be amazing. For sure. So any help we could get.
As I said, like the YouTube algorithm is a constantly changing thing, but I said like the likes, comments, stuff like that really helps to push for them to see that someone's enjoying it and push it to new people. And again, I know like now we're kind of going through a thing. While I'm trying to figure out my work stuff, I'm losing more and more of my free time in the week as my work expands, which is kind of why we've kind of cut back on the audio side. I do apologize to our audio only listeners. At the moment, it's just a time constraint and not wanting to get burnt out at the same time. As some of you do know, don't know, I kind of do all the editing after we do recording. And just finding the time to comfortably be able to do it and be able to give it proper amount of focus. That's the other thing is like there's time to do it, but am I in the right mindset to do it right? Am I gonna miss things? And then I put the video out, and then Nick's calling me like, "Yo, why is there a 20-minute section here where we're not even talking? Why is the audio cut out? Why is our lips not match?" Like, I want to make sure that the content we are putting out is proper, is good. And like I get like, this is a podcast, but we still want to try to have some entertainment elements to you outside of us just talking and yapping all day.
Make it fun. For the most part,
that's why you're here, but we still want to have some break to it.
We have personalities still, I promise. We're talking about deep topics, but we still have personality. So funny.
Yeah, but I said, and the more we get a chance to put more time into this, the more we'll be able to kind of like do with it. I think eventually having guests and stuff to be able to be like make an appearance on here is going to be nice. This how we're doing remote setup right now. One was just helpful for us this week, but two, it's also a test for the future. Then we can then have a setup where we can have a third person through a Zoom call, or we can do a Zoom call from our setup, and then our guest is where Nick is, and Nick's with me over here, and so like it's something that for the time being. Like we have plans, and we're gonna continue on it. But again, that it's the same idea though. It's like the change thing. It's like I'm pushing towards some change in my life, but because of that, I kind of need to focus on it. So, the podcast video on YouTube is our main focus for a while.
We'll get back to. We are both going through changes, huge, massive changes in our lives, and they both require more of our time than that.
As much as we enjoy doing this, he's got kids, he's got his health, I have work and relationships I'm trying to nurture outside of here, with my girlfriend and my family, trying to spend time with them still in that limited window of time when I'm off work. Because like currently I don't work from home. I don't even come home every day, which is a big part of why the time is a thing. Hopefully with this change, if I do end up pulling the trigger on it fully or it ends up going through right, I will be home more. It's just going to be a different schedule, figure that stuff out. But future, we have plans. We haven't forgot about y'all.
Big changes, good changes, good
love
things.
Y'all so much for listening to audio. So, again, just bear with us. But we'll keep giving you guys this. We'll keep talking about our books.
We'll still be here. And definitely just try, please, like, subscribe. Do all that stuff, and to say hello to your mother. We'll tell you that later on. let's get back to our.
But 12 Rules of Life, though, is something that we've dabbled in occasionally through our book corner since the beginning. It was one of the first books that we really started talking about, and it kind of branched us into everything else. So if our topic today interests you at all, if you go back through our catalog, just kind of watch through them from the beginning. You'll get a couple episodes there. We'll have more of the rules. You have some of our Harry Potter saga, which is a whole video section of, well, we're just going through Harry Potter like a bunch of nerds. Now he's on his, said his mushroom stint. I've been going through my own series.
We didn't do so well labeling. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Zane. We didn't do so well labeling the other videos, so you can't like go back and go, oh, here's rule 1, here's rule 2.
Yeah, and that's something that
we are gonna try to put that in there, but that's not something I do even. That's all Zane.
Yeah, but it's also something that said like we're gonna go back and try to add the timestamps to all the videos at some point. Kind of get them caught up. That way you can go back and just see what we're talking about at what points. That'll help with going back and trying to find certain moments. But again, just time thing is a thing that time will help us with. Just bearing with us. But today we're on what rule even number is it?
Well, we are on rule 9. Just to give them can we give them a quick review? Just a very quick.
So rule 1,
in case you don't want to go back and do it all. Here, rule 1 was stand up straight with your shoulders back, Zane.
So that one talks about just trying to go through life with some sort of confidence, even when things go wrong. It's a mental battle to not let it just beat you down. He mentions like the lobster thing, which is like it's almost like a joke, but it's also such a great analogy once you realize how he's connecting it. But like there's like lobsters when they lose a fight, they like become more timid and they let it beat them. And he kind of just talks about is like you got to just kind of push through things and like have a confidence in your life. And so yeah, that's the first rule. That was a good one.
Rule 2 was treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping.
That one's you. You can go ahead and summarize that one.
When you have other people that you want to take care of, oftentimes, whether it be a family member or a friend, you go out of your way to really like help them. Like, but when it's us, sometimes we don't help ourselves as much. Sometimes we're just like, well, it's me. I'm just gonna eat this crappy food, or I'm just gonna like not do anything for myself, or it's, maybe So it's just treat yourself like you're responsible for helping your best friend, like
but
really pay attention
to
the fact that you
earlier with like what you've been going through, how you said like you used to think your whole life was just for your kids.
Yeah, I was trying to find something else to do it for, but like ultimately, if you can't even love you can never love anybody else like that.
So like, now you're like, oh yeah, I have to do it for me too. Because if I'm not good, then I'm not the right person for my kids. So then it becomes a realization that like taking care of yourself is almost as important as taking care of anything else in your life.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Rule 3, make friends with people who want the best for you. I've got one right here. Right here. He is seriously like, he's someone who genuinely wants and wishes me well. And it's the same thing for him. Like I would never wish him ill. Like when he's successful, I feel like I flourish. When he is like when he falls down or something's wrong with his truck or anything, I'm just like, I feel like I'm suffering too. And it's like I want him to succeed. And like, that's what you want out of a friend. Like someone said that like the 5 people that you surround yourself with most, that you have the most interaction with, help shape your personality. And I believe something to that extent. I really believe that like what you surround yourself with and who you're around really affect you.
Oh, for sure.
Rule 4, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today.
It's just another thing about just giving yourself flowers for what you are doing right and comparing like, okay, I'm doing better today than I was yesterday. I've made progress. Like I was talking about with my job, is like I can look at people and be like, they're making so much more money than me. They have a nicer car. They have a house that's their own. And I can just, beat myself down because of it. Or I can Be like,
Yeah,
I'm in a better
I agree with you.
career. I'm in a happier place. I'm like, so it's talking about like, looking at your life and realizing the things that you have done.
Our
And
phones make it so much worse for us, dude. Like,
because
we're
we're
always being fed
constantly
everyone else's activities.
shown everybody else's life.
You wake up and you're looking at what other people did yesterday before you've even
and like,
started
we
your
talked
own.
about
You're
it before too, how like the phones affect relationships, and like how, like, you you see on your phone, you see, oh, such and such did something for their significant other, and then there's like that seed in your mind of like, why isn't someone doing that for me? Why didn't my significant other do something like that for me?
Or if
So
I don't go
like
do that for them, I'm not, a good partner or something.
So
And
it just puts seeds of like doubt on your relationship, on you as a person, and on your significant other as a person, and then it makes it like, even if they're unwarranted, it's still a hard thing to mentally just disconnect from.
Yeah, an idea is such a powerful thing. I mean, I've got a tattoo. Dorian Gray was poisoned by a book. Like, an idea, once you plant a seed, I mean, if you plant a bad seed, I mean, it can destroy somebody. So you need to be careful of what you even say to begin with. Like,
so
you can ruin things by what you speak.
Like with me, with that role, like right now, is like I said, like you can look around and be like, oh, there's these relationships that are, oh, they're going on vacations with each other all the time, and they can afford to do all this, and they just seem so in love. But like, if you just stop and like, I look at mine right now, like you said, I've been in with my girlfriend for 6 months. 6 months ago today is when we first met in person, and
congrats.
And I said, it's one of those things. Is like these past 6 months, like I if you had told me 6 months or 7 months ago that I would be as like genuinely like happy with somebody as I am, like, you knew how I was before I met her.
Yeah.
I was just like, fuck, I will do this shit, I guess. Like, I was just there. I was existing.
Yeah.
And like, she genuinely like makes me like happy, but I don't feel like
Dude,
I have to be
if you
someone
look at
I'm
your
not.
videos, have you ever go back and watch the old videos, like how you talk and like what, like you were such a, like, you were so in your, and I get it, like some of it is like us being more comfortable and not so self-conscious on camera and shit like that, but like you were in a shell, dude. Like you, with you and your past relationship even, and like and what you compared, the way you would talk about yourself in comparison to like almost like the outside world, and like outside of what you were a part of wasn't like, and now how you feel more of a part of it, other things, you're allowing yourself to be a part of the book corner. You've allowed yourself to be a part of more than just a shell. And so it's like you surrounded yourself with somebody who dominated your existence.
Yeah.
Is what happened, and if we surround ourselves with people who dominate our existence, or if we wake up every morning and we surround ourselves with apps, like in a constant feed, that dominates our existence, because we're not comparing ourselves anymore to the dead version or idea of ourself before we acquired new information. We are comparing ourselves to everything and everybody else in the world subjectively. And because of it, it destroys us.
For sure. Absolutely.
Next rule: do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. We'll start going through these. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world.
That one's easy. Same thing. Is kind of on the topic we're talking about. Like, where we compare ourselves to other people, also don't criticize other people, because you don't know what they're going through.
Until you feel okay, too.
And even then, it's not really a good thing to criticize people outside you, because, again, you don't know what they're going through. If you run into somebody at a store and they're maybe a little short, they're a little rude with you. I don't mean short in height. I mean, like, conversation-wise. Okay, I'm not being like, you're fucking short, fuck that. No. If they're, like, being rude and, like, they're cutting the conversation short, maybe something happened and they're just having a bad day, or they have something going on in their life. Doesn't mean that that person is a bad person because they were rude that day. They might just have some shit going on.
Don't make assumptions.
So it's like, don't throw fucking stones in a glass house. Like, you're not perfect. They're not perfect. You have shit happen. They have shit happen. Yes, there are people that are in general just kind of bad people, but for the most part, you can't just assume that about anybody. Don't assume shit. and just be like, oh, this person doesn't have their life together. Do you? Do you honestly have yours?
Yeah,
no
and
one,
it's like,
no one really
if
does.
you feel like your world is shit, that was the other thing about it. It was like, if you felt like your world was shit, it would look like the world and everybody else's world was shit, and the way everyone is treating you.
Because you
shit.
want
but it's
someone
like,
to blame.
But if your idea and your concept of the world and is filled with love, then it seems like everything that's coming at you is filled with the same thing. So it was like, make sure you feel okay before you try to criticize and look at everything, or else everything that you're looking at is not going to feel okay.
Yep.
You know, and like, I know we skipped over that don't let your children do anything that makes you just like them, but I don't want to like spend too much time going over and rehashing them all, because I want you to listen to the other episodes and go back.
We talk deep about these.
We really do talk about them. So I just want to speed them up real quick. But rule 7: pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. You know, again, I mean, it's like
work towards something, not the instant gratification of things. Again, with the apps, like you can get instant gratification from something, but do you actually feel fulfilled afterwards?
Yeah. Rule 8 was tell the truth, or at least don't lie.
So that's the last one we talked about, and it's again just try to be honest in everything you do. That's really what that one he talks a lot about it. If you get a chance to read the book, he really explains a lot of that shit really well. But a lot of the thing is just try to be truthful in everything you do, even if it may seem like in the moment it'll do more hurt than you think. It's just being honest in the end will always be better, because if you tell one lie, then it'll just stack on another lie, and then you just kind of get stuck.
And it's what you speak into existence. You know, if you start to speak your life as a lie, and everything you start to say becomes a lie, then you confuse yourself as well, and you confuse your world, and you start leading your world into chaos. You can refer to that rule for more information. Rule 9: assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. And that's where we are.
Yeah.
And I love this.
Yeah, this rule is a great rule. And even just that saying, if you haven't read the rule, it's still a good thing to think about, because like, even like, that's why I think a lot of schools have debate teams for that sentence alone. I was like, even if you don't agree on shit, you can still learn shit from somebody. If you have an honest debate about something, even if you don't agree on the final, you might learn something along the way. And like, so it's just like, there's so much that we don't know as people. Even if you find someone that thinks they know everything, they don't know everything.
Wise man admits he knows nothing.
Ken Jennings, man, won the most goddamn Jeopardy episodes of all goddamn time. That shit, he don't know everything. He might know 1% of everything. Maybe, if that. Like, everything is a lot. But
yeah. So rule 9, which we are at, is assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. And I want to draw attention to the line, because it says assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. And
he mentions that distinction early in the episode, where he talks about, he's like, listening entails paying attention.
Just like I paid attention to the fact that you keep saying episode and not chapter.
I said episode?
Yeah.
In the chapter.
In the next episode.
I do audio, so it's a little weirder to me. Like, I see each chapter as a episode
that's
of it.
True. That's true.
So
I forget that you do audio.
But early in the chapter, in that section, he says, like, listening entails that you actually pay attention to what that person is saying.
So since I have the physical copy of the book, it's a lot easier for me. Zane keeps a lot of mental notes, and he's great at that. However, I am not.
I can't write shit down. I'm driving.
I have written a lot of things down, and since I'm able to do so, I am able to kind of lead us into discussions on the chapter and bring up topics. I don't have
the physical book anymore,
which sort of helps. Yeah, I took his physical book, and as you can see, I've taken very good care of it.
Yeah,
look at this coffee stain.
Obviously.
Look at this beautiful. But see what I did? I turned the coffee stain into something that's actually beautiful, dude. Look at that shit. I love it. That's so pretty. Anyway,
Someone tag Jordan B. Peterson. Let him know how his book's being treated.
The first thing I did is
come on the show.
On page 233, the very first page of Rule 9, it just says read into next page on podcast. So it says not advice. Psychotherapy is not advice. Advice is what you get when the person you're talking with about something horrible and complicated wishes you would just shut up and go away. Advice is what you get when the person you are talking to wants to revel in the superiority of his or her own intelligence. If you weren't so stupid after all, you wouldn't have your stupid problems. Psychotherapy is genuine conversation. Genuine conversation is exploration, articulation, and strategizing. When you're involved in a genuine conversation, you're listening and talking, but mostly listening. Listening is paying attention. It's amazing what people will tell you if you listen. Sometimes, if you listen to people, they will even tell you what's wrong with them. Sometimes, they will even tell you how they plan to fix it. Sometimes, that helps you fix something wrong with yourself. One surprising time, and this is only one occasion of many when such things happened, I was listening to someone very carefully, and she told me within minutes, A, that she was a witch, and B, that her witch coven spent a lot of its time visualizing world peace together. That's where I'll stop. I'm not going to start reading this whole book to you, but this is a good point. The listening aspect, Zane.
Yeah, for sure. Because again, like, you know, it's something that I had to learn, like the idea of listening in like relationships, and it's like a cliche thing, like how like guys don't understand, and like a woman asks them for like they'll vent to their man, and then the guy, instead of just listening, which is all they really most of the time they just want, is someone to listen to what they're saying and understand that they're going through something. But as like men, we almost stop listening and go straight into how can I fix it?
Yes.
Before we actually just stop and listen. Like maybe they don't want you to fix it. They have a plan. Like it says, like if you listen long enough, they might tell you, one, what is happening, and two, how they plan to fix it. But if you cut off that second half, you listen long enough to hear that they have a problem, and then you're like, all right, here's how we're going to fix it. You just shut them down. So giving people the space to talk is huge. Because, again, like, it's something even for, like, yourself. When you're the one speaking to somebody, like if somebody's listening to you, it might sound weird to say, but listen to yourself as well. Because, again, like, that's why some people say like talk through a situation is almost better than just sitting there and thinking about it. Because when you have to actually put it into words, you almost start to understand yourself better. Because to speak it to someone else, you have to think it through more. Does that make sense? And we can get stuck in our own minds. So when we talk to somebody, listen to yourself, and you might actually help yourself. But when someone else is speaking, and like that, I said that immediately gave me the idea of like relationships, and like when my girlfriend comes to me and like she's having a bad day and she starts talking about it and like going through what's going on, she doesn't expect a solution to it, but being able to vocalize it and then know that somebody is actually genuinely hearing her, then that makes it better for them. And then you might actually get a better understanding of how they react to stuff. Because there's a lot of things that are said when somebody speaks that aren't necessarily verbalized, if that makes any sense. Like you can learn a lot about somebody by how they talk, and then how they recollect an event, and how they react to things without them actually saying that. Like they, talking about, I had a bad day at work, so I went and did this, this, and this, and they didn't be flat out, I react crazy, or like I react angry when somebody does this. They didn't specifically say that.
Yeah,
but based off of context of their conversation that you just listened to, you can learn about people.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I definitely feel like I do that with you too. Like,
I know
You
for a
know, like
fact with
I
me.
when we talk, since we have such like conversations with each other and we see things so differently, you know, and you've even said in the past, I mean, for anybody who looks at our the past autism test one that we did, it was like you even said in the past that you show traits of autism and stuff, and so like, and you're colorblind, and so I have to remember
Gothitism.
sometimes when I talk to you, you you don't see the world the same way I do,
Mm-mm.
and I don't see the world the same way you do. In fact, I don't even think about it the same way you do, and neither do you I. And so for me to assume, which I do all the time with everybody, especially you,
Mm-hmm.
that the things I'm saying to you or the things that um, I'm doing in front of you, you might not even experience the same way I am, and
Mm-hmm.
might make you feel entirely differently than I feel about the situation.
Yeah.
So my every interaction with you, if I'm not aware and listening to how you respond, like you just said, how you respond and you react to things, like you might learn how another person actually processes
mm-hmm.
information or what they, if you actually listen. But if I don't and I just assume
Yeah,
that
because something,
you,
especially when we started on this like whole YouTube thing, like it was more with the other channel that it came up. But it's like if we didn't have like a plan ahead and we're trying to like spur the moment to do shit, it's hard for me. And like I would get like overwhelmed and like trying to
yeah,
create it in the moment, and you're like, "Well, just do it." And I'm like, "You can't just do it. It doesn't work like that. You gotta have structure. We gotta have a plan." And you're like,
and
"Why?
now I
Well, just do it."
know
And I'm
that
like,
I need to
"Motherfucker, I'm
give
gonna
you the
explode."
time and the, yeah, that you can't, you're not just like, yeah, you got to
Yeah,
have a little, I want to plan what day we're getting at the time. Let's have an idea. Let's have a general idea. Yeah.
yeah,
I,
and
and
like
I get it.
and like I said, that is, and like even with like this today, like setting up for this like remote recording, like we at least like discussed it the day before, and I was like, okay, like
Mhm.
I'll go home, I'll get it set up, I'll get it prepped in. I knew for the most part the only thing I had to figure out was the Zoom side, and then how we're going to record it. Like the recording part, we have down. We do that. I've been doing recording and like stuff like that for years. That part I had down, so I wasn't stressed on it. Only thing I was worried about was, are we getting together or are we not? And if so, how are we doing this? Like,
Yeah.
but as soon as we're like, we'll just do the remote thing, we'll be fine. I was like, all right, we're good.
And you've tried to tell me about the editing process for so long too. You know, I mean, some of it helped when I was able to see and I took the time to like listen to what you were
Mm-hmm.
saying and then take to see what it took for you to do it and then also stuff like that. But it was like when you tell me, you know, I have to put myself in your, when you're listening to somebody, you have to kind of put yourself aside. You have to.
Yeah,
If you're actually listening to somebody, you cannot be thinking about other things. You have to be
yeah,
absorbing and feeling what they're saying to take their perspective on it. That's listening, right? So
mm-hmm.
you have to put yourself aside. And so when you before were telling me, you know, and I'm like, I know how this works for me. Like this is how my life works. So it's like I know this is working for me, but how could it not work for you? Like it works
Mm-hmm.
out fine. The results show for themselves. And I'm like, but it's not working for you. And so it's like if I didn't listen to what you were saying and put myself, okay, wait a second. Now I can. Okay, he's getting. Like, I see now. It's. I am.
Mm-hmm.
I am aware that you are now uncomfortable, and it's like,
Yeah,
especially for even someone who has autism, you aren't even necessarily like aware all the time of
shit around me.
everything around you because
Yeah,
you're so focused on how it, your anxiety and stuff. So,
and like it is
dude,
like
huge help.
to clarify, I don't have
No,
autism, but
he
like
doesn't have
according to that
autism.
test, like I was like pretty high like towards it. Like I have some tendencies that might get misconstrued towards like an autism thing, but it's also
Well,
just an
yeah, and there's
ADHD
no way to
thing.
like. I
There's
hate.
also a slight like I have like an OCD almost, but not in all of life. It's like just in certain aspects. It's just it's a lot of things that have come
Diagnoses
from
are tough. Yeah, you
yeah.
know. Yeah,
So
we're not doing that, and that's I don't mean
but
hate, but
yeah,
like I
yeah,
dislike putting a thing on it, which is why there's
yeah,
a spectrum for everything.
yeah.
But like he was higher. I am technically autistic, and he's autistic, and everyone's autistic. If you want to say autistic ranges from 0 to 100 on a spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then we're technically all on the spectrum, even if we're at 0. So you're all autistic, or you're all not autistic. So it's like all and none. That's I'm getting into philosophy, but
Yeah.
the point is we're not putting anything on anyone. We're just saying he was higher on the spectrum. So if you're going off of that spectrum and you're talking about, you know, characteristics of somebody higher up, the awareness of other people's emotions and anything from eye contact to especially having a conversation with somebody can be impeded being higher on the spectrum. That's all it was meant. So I didn't mean to offend if I offended.
Yeah. But again, it's just like, listening to people is such, it's easy in concept, but in action is not as easy as it seems. Like, oh, I just got to listen to him. No, you got to actually, like he says in that, listening is the act of actually paying attention to the person and what they're saying, not just hearing what they say and letting it pass through. Like you might, when you listen to a song, you just kind of, you listen to the song, but are you actually understanding the song? Or are you just like, this is a bop? And then you're like, all right, next song. Next thing you know, you actually 5 songs down. You didn't realize you were listening, but were you actually listening? And it's the same thing with a person. Like, you got to actually give them your attention and understand what they're going through, and like the subtleties of what they're talking about and how it's actually making them feel. That's an important part.
Yeah, especially to even have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Another note I put, it just says reorganizing the past and points in this direction. So at about the same time I was seeing this client, the media was all afire with stories of recovered memories, particularly of sexual assault. The dispute raged apace. Were these genuine accounts of past trauma, or were they post hoc constructs, dreamt up as consequence of pressure wittingly or unwittingly applied by incautious therapists? Because, you can plant an idea into someone's head. And if you immediately decide you're going to fix someone's problem when they're talking about something, you can imply that something happened to them that might not have happened. And they go, oh, well, maybe that did happen. Right. So that's all he was saying. So, or were they post hoc constructs dreamt up as a consequence of pressure, wittingly or unwittingly applied by incautious therapists, grasped onto desperately by clinical clients, all too eager to find a simple cause for all their trouble? Sometimes it was the former, perhaps, and sometimes the latter. I understood much more clearly and precisely, however, how easy it might be to instill a false memory into the mental landscape as soon as my client revealed her uncertainty about her sexual experiences. The past appears fixed, but it's not in all important psychological sense. There's an awful lot to the past, after all, and the way we organize it can be subject to drastic revision. It's kind of like our own form of time travel, in a sense. We have the ability to go back and, for good or bad, erase and pretend like something that was traumatic did not occur. So let's say, just as the example, someone was sexually assaulted and they go the rest of their lives as if they have convinced themselves it did not occur. And because they have convinced themselves that it did not occur because it was too painful to deal with, they have inadvertently and subconsciously added toxicity to the outside influences of their life because they have not dealt with the past trauma. Then there's the opposite scenario where someone did not get sexually assaulted and they have gone to somebody to seek help for something, and then the idea was planted in their head that that's what occurred, and they try to fix their current problem that does not involve sexual assault with the idea in their head or concept in their head that that's what happened to them. And then that spirals on, and then that not only creates a lie for all the other people who were sexually assaulted, and now everyone's like, well, all these other cases weren't true. It looks like no one else is true. Or it creates the situation in reverse. So it's like, either way, we have the ability to reorganize the past. What happened. Also, a memory is to us. So let's say I experienced something that Zane did not experience, and then I have the memory of it, and I can manipulate the memory of it. But Zane doesn't know that I experienced that to begin with. So it's only real to me. But since it's only real to me, my actions, based off of the fact that I have that experience, so if it was traumatic, however I then respond to something that's only real to me, now can influence Zane. directly. Because if I take my own individual memory of something he has no memory of, and then because of that act out in front of him, then that now affects him. And that is a whole concept that is incredibly difficult to fathom, because that is a fourth dimensional idea. That's a construct outside of something that we can just think of without being planted in us.
Yep.
So the other thing I have is shaping memory of the past to substantiate a claim. So I think that's basically what we were saying in a sense.
Yeah.
Where
and he talks about it in the book, sort of, where he says like a client's going through something, so a therapist starts to like infer the possibility of something, even though it may not be true. He can, he puts the like the inferring that it might be, and then the client might, latch on to those, and then now her memory that might have already been vague is now kind of pulled towards believing the inference that the, said, like the maybe unwitting therapist has said. And he says, like, especially in like cases of like sexual abuse, where like it may not have been, and it was like, or unknown, it was buried. Now the memory is leaning towards that. So then that client starts to lean towards, well, maybe that is what happened, which then leads towards accusations, like he says. And then accusations have consequences outside that person. Because now they accuse somebody. So now that person's getting accused. Their life gets affected. Yes. And like, that's where it said, like, it's a very, like, if you're not properly listening and then that stuff gets misconstrued, it can have effects.
That is time travel.
Yeah.
That is what time travel is. I mean, you are going to a past event and shaping it, coming back to the present moment, and then the future is impacted because of it. That's called time travel. We do it all the time. We time travel all the time. This just says, give your life direction. So I'll pick it up and I'll just read, and hopefully I left myself a good note. I knew all about this when Miss S came to talk to me about her sexual experiences. He uses this as an example because we need examples in a story to help us convey an idea. When she recounted her trips to the single bars and their recurring aftermath, I thought a bunch of things at once. I thought, you're so vague and so non-existent. You're a denizen of chaos and the underworld. You are going 10 different places at the same time. Anyone can take you by the hand and guide you down the road of their choosing. After all, if you're not the leading man in your own drama, you're a bit player in someone else's. And you might well be assigned to play a dismal, lonely, and tragic part. After Miss S recounted her story, we sat there. I thought, you have normal sexual desires. You're extremely lonely. You're unfulfilled sexually. You're afraid of men and ignorant of the world and know nothing of yourself. You wander around like an accident waiting to happen, and the accident happens, and that's your life. So this goes to say that we give ourselves direction, or we don't. If we wake up every single day and we just go through the motions of what we assume is going to be every day. We go, I'm going to wake up. Okay, I got to go to work. Now I'm going to go to work. Now I know my day is going to be work, and I hate work, so my day is going to be shitty. It's like, that's just your day. It's just you've just programmed your day to be a monotonous routine.
Yep.
If you give your life direction, if you give it purpose, if you wake up and you go about each day, each moment as the fact that you have the ability to shape it with intention, if you give yourself intention, you can shape your world. If you don't, it seems like chaos. Yep. And you're like, well, I'm just falling into a pit of chaos. Of course you are, because you haven't shaped it.
He also talks about that a little bit after, I think, that part in the chapter where he says it's why a lot of like psychology programs work is like at such a high rate is because people that, especially like Miss S, as he calls her in the book, a lot of people, when they have like a lot of mental issues, they don't have direction. They don't have something to latch onto. There's nothing that makes sense. So a lot of the like psychology programs have structure built into them. So as soon as you give someone like that has not known structure, not known direction, any form of it, they will easily latch onto it. Which is why they say like they seem to work at such a high rate, is because as soon as they can get anything to grab onto and help direct them, they will.
Yeah.
They need it, but they don't know how to give it to themselves.
Sorry, I'm still looking for
His notes and
thing.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like I said, that was the direction thing, and like that's an important thing. Is like a lot of listening to people is the people that are looking for direction, but they don't know how to give it themselves. So they'll talk, and like they'll almost talk crazy, like not crazy, but like chaotically. Like their stories don't really make sense, or their ideas don't really have like a point to them, and things like that. Like he talks about it with that Miss S, where he asked her like if he says CV, which in like Canada is your resume. And he like, you have a resume, you give like work. She's like, oh yes, and she brought in like a 50-page like file that she like was gonna give to potential employers, because she had so little to know about herself that she put anything she did, which was like her dreams and her hobbies and like things like that. It was like, none of this has to do with you getting a job. You like, most resumes are like a page or two, and she's like, here's a fucking encyclopedia of my life, hire me. Like, but it's because she didn't understand direction or her own self, so she didn't understand what was needed, so she just gave him everything.
Yeah, that was a wild example. You're right. I do remember that in here. It was a wild example. I was kind of like blown away by that. I was like, I don't quite understand this, because that's not the way I think, you know? But it's so true. And it's like, it just goes back to that direction thing. It's like this woman would just walk into a bar and go, I'm just going to get fucked up, and just whatever happens, happens. And it's like, well, that's chaos every time. Like, so it's like, you're now dealing with the law of probability. Like, now if you're going to a bar just to let whatever happens, happens, what's the probability that of a bar full of sleazy men, you're going to get raped, right? And if the probability is high, then you have a high probability of every single time doing that, getting raped, right? But if like you go into the bar and your intent is, I'm going to go in, have a few drinks, or I'm going to go in and get fucked up with my friends and leave at the end of the night. Like, if you have a plan, then you can shape your night. But if you just go into things like, I'm just gonna let whatever comes, let's see what the law of karma does.
You're like a lost denizen on the winds or something. It's like how he words it. He's like, you're a denizen on the winds, and any man he can just grab your arm and lead you the way they want you to.
Yes, because you have no direction.
Yeah.
It's not to say that what's happening is okay. It's just but you're allowing things to occur. You are yourself allowing yourself to be thrown into chaos. There were and are only partial accounts and fragmentary viewpoints, but some are still better than others. Memory is not a description of the objective past. Memory is a tool. Memory is the past's guide to the future. If you remember that something bad happened and you can figure out why, then you can try to avoid that bad thing happening again. That's the purpose of memory. It's not to remember the past. It's to stop the same damn thing from happening over and over. Memory is what allows us to move forward into the future.
For sure.
Memory is our ability to time travel. Literally.
The past is one of the greatest teachers in life. And memory is your access to the past. Any writings and things you read is just somebody's memory. It's just a memory of somebody's idea at that point.
Yeah. Yes. People need to think. The people I listen to need to talk. Because that's how people think. People need to think. Otherwise, they'd wander blindly into pits.
That's why that's right there. That sentence alone, I'm gonna stop you, is kind of what I said earlier. Or like, when you talk, you need to listen to yourself, because when you have to speak it to somebody, you have to have thought it through enough to verbalize it. Like you can say, like that's why sometimes I said like just having someone to listen is so important. Because again, like I could sit here in this chair with nobody and think about all the things going on in my life and be like, well, this all sucks, and like not be able to get a direction with it. But then like I talked to you last week, and I talked to people in my family about like the work stuff, and then I talk, and then by just me talking through, I get to points, and then you guys afterwards are like, well, it sounds like this is what you're going through, and I'm like, that actually makes sense. But if I just sit here and think to myself, I am so much less likely to get to that point because I'll just think myself in circles.
Yeah.
Where, again, talking requires that you've actually thought it enough to be able to vocalize it. Because you'll think at 4 million miles an hour. You can't speak at that level. You have to be able to concisely speak what you're saying. And especially if you use the last rule, the rule number 8, where it's like, don't lie. If you speak and you're speaking honestly, you will help yourself think through a process so much faster than if you just sat there in silence and let yourself fall into, like it says, talk yourself into a pit.
Yeah. I think you're right on that. Well, all we said was the people I listen to need to talk because that's how people think. People need to think, otherwise they wander blindly into pits. When people think, they simulate the world and plan how to act in it. They do a good job of simulating. They can figure out what stupid things they shouldn't do. Then they cannot do them. Then they don't have to suffer the consequences. That's the purpose of thinking, but can't do it alone. Like Zane said, we simulate the world and plan our actions in it. Only human beings do this. That's how brilliant we are. We make little avatars of ourselves. We place those avatars in fictional worlds, then we watch what happens. If our avatar thrives, then we act like he does in the real world, and then we thrive, we hope. If our avatar fails, we don't go there. If we have any sense. We let him die in the fictional world so that we don't have to really die in the present.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just a matter of, again, like...
That's also Buddhist philosophy. Yeah, that's also part of Buddhist philosophy.
Yeah, but listening to yourself, like I said, like being able to understand what you want and where you're trying to get to and what goals you have are so important. That's like how we started this episode where I talked about the idea of complacency. And if you get to a point where you're not trying to move forward, then what are you doing? Are you just existing? Or are you actually working towards something? And if you think about life and you think about the possibility of change and accept that change is a thing, then you can plan for change to an extent, and you can plan towards a future, and you can plan towards, potential issues. That all goes into every aspect of life. Even like when they talk about like saving for like rainy day fund, or saving for like if you own a house, like saving for if your water heater breaks, do you actually have savings ahead of time? Have you thought that into that world and made sure that you're prepared for it? Or are you going to like, everything's fine now, but then you wake up tomorrow and you have no hot water? Oh shit, now what?
But if and it's like we have already programmed our existence so far. Like for instance, we know that we've woken up every day for years and years and years and years, and the sun's come up. Mm-hmm. We know that every single night we go to bed,
we talked about
moon
it last
is
week
out,
with that.
Or the sun goes down. We know that like when we go out into public and we cause a scene, or we beat the shit out of people, or we kill people, you typically are arrested or killed yourself. Or so like we have programmed responses mm-hmm. to everything we do already. We know what's going to happen if we do this. We have a general idea of what's going to happen if we do that. You know what I mean? And mm-hmm. we do that in our minds all the time just to figure anything out.
For sure.
Every single time we have to go back into this, I get slightly unfocused.
It's all good. But it's trying to Just make sure
It's
we
all
talk
part of
about
it.
enough without like completely giving away the chapter, you know, because we still
Yeah,
want
it's
you
all
like
part of it.
it's a great book to read. It's not something that you're just gonna sit down one night and just read through it and be like, that was a great read. No, it's something you read in bits. You do a chapter at a time, think about it for a while, go back to a chapter at a time. It's not a like a fantasy epic where you're like, I just can't wait to read the next page. You're like, no, you read one chapter, you get through one idea, and then you think about it. Then when you got time again, you're in that mindset to think again. You get to the next chapter.
Yeah.
It's a great purchase though, great book. The Jordan does a very good job of explaining through things. You might not understand it at first. You might be like, where is he going with this? Like how he starts the book. He's like, here's some fucking lobsters. You're like, why are we talking about lobsters right now?
Yeah, and you might not agree with every single thing he says either,
But that's the thing.
if you
Is
keep
like
an open
this rule
mind and you
says,
listen, you can learn a lot.
just assume anybody you're listening to knows something you don't.
Yeah. If you're reading this, I already lost my place. Hold on. Okay, if you're reading this book, there's a strong probability that you're a privileged person. Why? You can read. You have time to read. You're perched high in the clouds. It took untold generations to get you where you are. A little gratitude might be in order. If you're going to insist on bending the world to your way, you better have your reasons. If you're going to stand your ground, you better have your reasons. You better have thought them through. You might otherwise be in for a very hard landing. You should do what other people do, unless you have a very good reason not to. If you're in a rut, at least you know that other people have traveled that path. Out of the rut is too often off the road. And in the desert that awaits off the road, there are highwaymen and monsters. So speak wisdom. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't agree with the way that's worded, which is why I put this here. I agreed at the beginning, and then I didn't. So, and I wanted to point this out, and I think that's why I put this here. It says, if you're reading this book, there's a strong probability that you're a privileged person. I agreed with that statement right from the get-go. Then it says, you can read. Yes, you have time to read. Yes, you're perched high in the clouds. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. It took untold generations to get you where you are. Yes, it certainly did. A little gratitude might be in order. And yes, it is. For sure. If you're going to insist on bending the world to your way, you better have your reasons. And you know what? For the most part, that sure makes sense. If you're going to stand your ground, you better have your reasons. And honestly, that makes sense as well. Yeah. You better have thought them through. Yes, because if not, your argument falls through. You might otherwise be in for a very hard landing, which is also true. And you should do what other people do, is the next sentence. You should do what other people do unless you have a very good reason not to. That also makes quite a bit of sense. Mm-hmm. In the sense that, like, if you're looking at things and you see that they happen all the time and they get the same result, mm-hmm. then it's pretty fair to assume that if you do the same thing as them, you're going to get the same result if you do it the same way. True. And then you can use that as a construct to sort of shape whether or not you would do that based off of the result that everyone else keeps getting, right? So you should do what other people do unless you have a very good reason not to. Mm-hmm. Now, if for some reason you see something that they do and they're doing it, and they're getting a result that you don't want, that would be a very good reason not to
do what they're doing, yeah.
This does not mean that you should just do what everybody else does without examining their results.
Yeah. It doesn't say blindly do what everyone else does. It just says do what other people do.
Unless you have a very good reason not to, which if you're just not paying attention to the results of what other people mm-hmm. do, is still easy to do. It's still easy to follow this without almost listening to their results. Mm-hmm. So if you just go, well, they're always doing this, everyone, so it looks like, so if 99 people or 98, let's say there's 98 people doing something, and you're not paying attention to the results, but there's 98 people doing it, and there's one person who's not, and you aren't paying attention to results, you're more likely to choose those 98 people over the one.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you then view the results and the one person got better results, you are more likely to go to the one person based off of even the fact that 98 other people did it. And that's why it's so important to not take this sentence out of context.
Yeah. And
so that's why I had to do this.
The whole like idea when people say, if they jump off a bridge, are you going to do it too? It's like, no. If you're not paying attention, you're just blindly following, then you'll jump off that bridge. But if you're actually paying attention, and that's why he mentions that listening is the act of paying attention.
This is why I went from somebody who was raised Roman Catholic and blindly followed Roman Catholicism because everyone told me to. And did it until I fell apart, hit the fucking ground, renounced Roman Catholicism, went into straight up nihilism, fell apart even more, hit the ground, saw my soul in theory, and then started to pick myself up after examining the essence of my soul, if you want to put it like that, and then giving myself some sort of sense of direction, and then examining one being open to other things, one
listening
going, okay, what I know is not all of it. I saw, saying that what I know is not enough. And then going, okay, I'm not going to, just because I didn't agree with something in the past, ignore every other thing that contains that word or anything relating or pertaining to spirituality. Then being open, and then reading and examining things from all major aspects, not all, but a lot of many different sources, and then listening to the information I receive, and then for myself, in my heart, what feels to me right in certain ways, taking that bit of information or any information, not to say just, I don't even want to just say Buddhism. If someone were to say, hey, are you a Buddhist? I wouldn't say no. I would say no, I'm not. Have I been practicing Buddhism? Have I been studying Buddhism? Yes. Am I a Buddhist? No. Okay, because I cannot claim to be a Buddhist. Cannot claim that. That's not fair to claim.
No.
I actively practice Buddhism. I am continually going to actively practice this, and many outside things as well that I'm pulling in that are not Buddhist philosophy. There's many things I've incorporated into my lifestyle that's not. And there's many aspects of Buddhism that I'm not necessarily incorporating.
Sure.
So it would not be fair to say that I'm a Buddhist. So I don't want anyone just upon hearing this to be offended. It would break my heart if the Buddhist community felt like I was offensive in any way, because I'm not trying to be. I feel inspired by Buddhist culture.
Yeah.
And I am not actively saying I'm a Buddhist. I have been practicing forms of Buddhism and actively studying it. But there's many other things that I've been incorporating outside of that and paying attention to and studying as well. And I just wanted to bring that up because part of listening is he even talks in here about gauging when you give a lecture, and we'll get into it, but when you give information or when you speak in general, it's gauging how your audience might feel and being able to steer your conversation into a way that won't hurt people as well.
Yeah. This rule definitely has a lot to it.
It brings up Freud a lot. Freud. I put that in here. He was talking about basically Freud insisted that psychoanalysts be analyzed themselves. He wanted those who practiced his method to uncover and eliminate some of their own worst blind spots and prejudices so they would not practice corruptly. Freud had a point. He was, after all, a genius. You can tell that because people still hate him. That's a little joke. But there are disadvantages to the detached and somewhat distant approach recommended by Freud. Many of those who seek therapy desire and need a closer, more personal relationship, although that also has its dangers. There is, in part, This is in part why I have opted in my practice for the conversation instead of the Freudian method, as have most clinical psychologists. So he talks about that.
But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff, and said like it's a very good chapter. There's a lot of stuff we didn't, bring up, of course, and that's because there's a lot. It's a dense book, but it's a very well written book.
It is, and you know what? There's so much more to it. Because looking at this, right, we went from, and I know we're out of time pretty much because we really are, and we have to wrap up. But just to give you an idea, Rule 9 started on page 233, and we're on 244. We're 10 pages in, and I'm still talking about this. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, probably just as many, if not more, pages left. So what we'll do is part 2 of this next time. Include that, sum it up for you, and we'll go into some of the other things we've been reading. Zane, what else are you reading? Let's get into.
I finished Oathbringer, third book of Stormlight Archive. I'm going to be doing the novella this week, and then starting the fourth book. And then it'll be a waiting period between that and when the fifth book comes out in December. But other than that, I'll probably find another series or something to read in the meantime. I haven't decided what series. If you guys have any suggestions along the fantasy idea that Lord of the Rings, Stormlight Archive, things like that feel free to let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions on a series to read after. I know you've got more of your mushroom stuff. You got your, I think right here's your Fundamentals of Buddhism, and then your Octopus book right here.
So the Fundamentals of Buddhism is what I will be reading next. This is by Peter D. Santina. It is another. I don't know if it's a Dhamma text. It looks like it's a Dhamma text. But this is Octopus, the ocean's intelligent invertebrate.
Yep. I think there's a whole Netflix documentary on octopus too.
Octopuses?
Octopuses.
Yeah, here's a fun fact for you. The plural's not really octopi. It's octopuses. So just a quick little fun fact. I'll talk more about it. Next time. So we'll get into that. We'll get into his book. We'll get into the fundamentals of Buddhism, which I'm assuming is probably in between the elements and the essence, but from an entirely different perspective.
Yep. Just a different angle.
Probably man.
The triangle of Buddhism. There's the elements, there's the essence, and then there's the fundamentals, and they all make
and then the fundamental. They holds it up entirely.
It's the Illuminati. Anyways.
No, not the same thing. Don't do that.
But yeah, man, it was good to be here with you. I'm glad we'll be able to do this. Probably be in person next week.
Yeah. Hopefully.
But again, brother, it's always a great time to sit here and record with you.
Yeah, man. I love you, dude. If you guys could at home, please just go hit that like button, hit that subscribe,
comment
do all the snazzy McDazzy that everybody does. Comment, tell Zane that he looks awesome. Tell me I look like dump. Whatever you want to do, vice versa. At the same time, if you could, say hello to your mother for me.
And tell somebody you love them. You can do them at the same time if it's your mother. Tell them hi and that you love them. That's 2 for 1. Anyways, see you guys next time. Thank you again.
We love you too.
Subscribe. Do all the shit we already spoke of.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, Zane.